Hi, welcome to The Innovator, the podcast where we take an in-depth look at accountable innovation in education. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and I serve as the Executive Director of the President's Forum, which is an association of higher education leaders who are dedicated to the reinvention of higher education with a student-first perspective. We had a great conversation earlier today with National University President Mark Milliron. President Milliron is the 6th president of National University, and as president, he is focused on 3 areas. First, whole human education. Second, next generation learning. And third, credential-rich pathways. So let's get right into our conversation with President Milliron. All right, Mark, let's start with a question on the top of everybody's mind. Who's your favorite professional wrestler of all time?
Professional wrestler of all time. Well, it used to be Hulk Hogan, but then I found out that my wife, her father was actually on the professional wrestling circuit back in the 60s and 70s. And he wrestled under the name Tiny Buchanan, and I guess he was a 6'6", 340-pound guy, and so he wasn't that tiny. But the guy he loved wrestling with was Dusty Rhodes. So I guess I've since moved to Dusty Rhodes as my favorite because he's such a family favorite across the board.
I'm sure that we could do an entire podcast just based on your courtship with your wife and your father-in-law being involved.
The first question I always got was, "Have you met her dad?" It taught me about courage, Wes. It taught me about courage.
Yeah, that's the tie-in. There are a lot of things that we have to do in higher ed that require courage. Okay, we nailed that. Okay, so let's move on to higher education. Tell us, how did you come to be the president at National?
Yeah, so my entire career, over 30 years in the world of education, has been about trying to help open up pathways for more and more diverse students from more backgrounds than ever before. And I've been committed to doing that work in K-12, community colleges, universities, nonprofit and colleges across the country, public colleges and private. I've done work in the ed tech space, I've done work in the foundation space, I've done work in the policy space, trying to pull levers to try to help more and more diverse students be more successful than ever before. I got to a place where the opportunity to come to a university like National University that was laser focused on this student population, and it actually was built for purpose for it 52 years ago by a Navy captain, PhD, who was really upset watching sailors, airmen, soldiers coming out using their GI Bill, and the traditional model didn't fit. It didn't work with their while they were trying to work full time and trying to raise their families. And so he said there has to be a better way. There's got to be a different kind of model. And so he helped invent a new model of education, or a flexible model of education, to help get them on that pathway to possibility. And and he began with things like 4-week classes and 8-week classes, and just innovating with one-to-one models. And you fast forward 50 years forward, and you've got a university that has now educated more than 250,000 students for bachelor's, master's, and doctorate and law degrees, all but still completely focused on working students, non-traditional students in the military. Like 50% of our undergraduate students are military. We're one of the top producers. In fact, I think we're the top producer of graduate degrees for BIPOC students in the country. About 2/3 of our students are diverse. That kind of place just resonated so much with me, Wes. So me being able to bring my background with everything from Western Governors to the Gates Foundation to UT Austin, and community college world to bear on the work of National University was just an easy fit.
What a perfect fit. Okay, so as the president, tell us what do you want to accomplish as the president of National?
Well, it's really more about what National University and our entire kind of faculty and staff want to accomplish. And we're very, very focused on our mission of providing world-class student experiences for the students that we care about, the students we care about. We love all students in the world of higher education, but we are built to try to help those students who are low income, first generation, diverse, but especially working military, non-traditional students. That's our zone. We love our state universities. We love our research universities. Keep doing what you're doing. I love vaccines. That's good stuff. We love our community colleges because they're partners with us on transfer pathways. Our purpose is to provide really high quality education in the right kind of format and with the right kind of support for the students that we care about. And we want to be difference makers, training difference makers. Like so many of our students, like I said before, half of them came out of the military at the undergraduate level. They have a commitment to service and they want to be difference makers. And if we can help them get a degree that helps them go on to become difference makers, that's fantastic. So we really want to continue that legacy and go into the next generation. Like, how do we keep using next generation tools, the best kinds of support to help these students get on these highly productive pathways and make powerful differences in their local communities, state communities, and across the country. And our goal at National is to be a shining example of how you can serve these students incredibly well. And you've heard me say this before, Wes, we want to be partners in educational ecosystems. We want great high schools, great community colleges, great publics, universities, private universities. But you need players like us who are very focused on those non-traditional and working and military students to add to the mix, because that's a growing part of higher education. And we think that we could actually help be an example to lots of other folks about how they could reach out to these student populations.
That student first mentality is just, I mean, it's exactly what the President's Forum is about, and the fit of National. I feel like National's a microcosm of the President's Forum generally. I love the fit. Tell me, I know that you have three primary focuses that you've outlined: the whole human education, next generation learning, and credential rich pathways. What do you want to tell us about those three areas of emphasis?
Yeah, that really is our theory of change, right? That, like, how we think we're going to achieve the mission we were just talking about is, we really think we have to continually adopt next generation education. And that's not a trendy phrase. That's a theory of work, which is that at every stage, we are trying to improve and expand our policies, our practices, our use of technologies and techniques to help more and more diverse students be more successful. That means being willing to adopt different kinds of next generation form, which includes things like competency-based education, one-on-one models, being able to leverage virtual reality and XR technologies, being able to leverage AI, whatever the tool or technology would be. I mean, going back to our earliest days, we were in 1973, we were adopters of this killer technology for asynchronous learning called the cassette tape. Right. So we began by using this stuff. We're constantly upping the game. Right. And so now we just did a podcast this morning about our expansive work in metaverse and XR technologies and how we're weaving that into our programs. But that's not enough. We have to use those tools and technologies and policies and practices, but wrap it in a deep understanding of who our students are. And we call that whole human education, which is the realization that we want to provide the right support for academics, for financial support, for psychosocial support, social emotional learning, career support. We want to find the right support for the right student at the right time in the right way. And that might mean for rock stars getting out of their way, right? And it might mean for others heavy scaffolds. But we think next gen education wrapped in whole human, and you aim it at what we call value rich education. And value rich education is we want students to, like, in some ways, suck the marrow out of this experience, right? It's not just about completing. It's, are they absolutely making the most of this educational experience? So we have credential rich, like we want them to optimize all the credentials that give them labor market value. We want to weave those into our program. So we have certifications that lead to certifications, that lead to degrees, that lead to other degrees. And the idea is we want them to optimize the credential pathway. We actually measure what we call credential density, right? We also want them to have the best experiences while they're in this, meaning we want them to actually do internships and co-curricular and connections with other folks, because those experiences are often transformational. And then we also want them to build the connections that really are going to be with them in their entire lives. Connections with faculty, connections with other students, connections with people in their profession. That's the value of education. And if our theory is that if we can combine next gen with whole human and aim it at value rich education, the more we do of that, the more we're going to be able to achieve that mission.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I really love the credential rich pathways, or the value pathways that you're talking about. The idea that you're looking at ways to create value for the student. It seems to me that it creates value even if you have, and in the event, and we all have, all institutions deal with this, non-completion. That if you're packing this with value the whole way through, even learners who don't complete a full, pathway to a credential still have these credentials on their way?
If you've done your work well, you should have packed enough value in there that regardless of their age and stage with you, that they're going to see that that was a valuable experience and they're going to want to possibly come back and connect at another time. We really think if we serve our students well, they're going to tell other students about it. And like you and I have joked about this before. I just am so frustrated with people who think that universities are in competition with other universities. That's an absolute, I think it's just a terrible way to look at it. I think we're in competition with poverty. We're in competition with ignorance. We're trying to actually change those dynamics. There are 40 million people out there with some college and no credential. Fine, national will take 1%. You can have all the rest, right? There's tons of work for us to do in the adult learning and non-traditional working space. We just got to get after it, right? And
I love that
that's
mindset.
why I love the President's Forum, because we can link arms and let's break down those policy barriers. Let's expand those practices. Let's make sure we're helping people understand the possibilities and realize that we're not disparaging other models of education. We're just saying, hey, these models matter and they're going to make a difference for our country. They're going to make a difference for our states and for our regions.
I love the transition to how we can work together as an association in the President's Forum to drive results on issues that are bigger than one institution, right? So what would you say is the most pressing policy challenge right now that the collaboration at the President's Forum can address?
Yeah, I think there are a number of them. And I think, obviously the biggest one is just the funding strategies, is just making sure that we really take a look at things like, is the Pell Grant at the level it needs to be at to help striving students be able to succeed? It has not been increased in well over a decade, so in a significant way. So it's figuring out how we can actually get it back to the spending level, the kind of buying power it was when it was created, which would be a big jump, right? So there's a lot of folks who are advocating for double Pell. We just have to get in that conversation. But there's also things like, being able to get, the tuition assistance for the military back to the level it used to be. Same thing. It's figuring out how we can make sure that low income striving students are being supported in the way that makes sense. That's one, and making a case for it. The other is making sure we're looking at the regulatory regimes that are coming out of the Department of Ed, accreditation, whatever it might be, and making sure that people who are I get why they're doing this. They're trying to create structures that stop predatory behaviors that are happening, bad actors from doing bad things in the world of education. But they're creating sometimes regulations that actually have conflated for-profit, bad actors with people who are trying to innovate around things like online learning to be able to serve non-traditional students. And I think we have to really watch that. And then one of the things we've said to legislators, we've been in the room together, Wes, saying this, is feel free to run it by us. We can tell you, will this actually get in the way of helping some of these striving learners be successful? Can we, for example, workforce Pell, making sure it's available for students who are doing online and blended learning? That's a big deal because more and more of the low income first generation folks, that's how they're going to access it. Those things really kind of matter. So I think funding, regulatory reform, and I think, the kind of last thing for us is just making sure we're willing to kind of steal good ideas from each other. I'm a big believer in the CASE method, which CASE stands for copy and steal everything. Other people are doing good stuff in this world. We got to pull it in. We had Greg Fowler, the president of UMGC, University of Maryland Global Campus, who is just amazing. He came and spoke to our board, and we had a full conversation at National University about how we're sister institutions. They basically are to the Army what we are to the Navy, and we were just really talking about how we could steal good ideas from each other, and we were all talking about things we could learn from each other in different ways. That's exactly what we need to try to help the students that we're talking about.
I can't emphasize enough how important that mindset is that, hey, we're not competing against each other. We're competing against poverty. We're competing against, bad outcomes in the workforce together, and we can learn from each other and all do better. The pie is absolutely big enough for all of us to succeed.
Yeah, and there's such diversity within President's Forum. You look at the power and purpose of WGU, which is just amazing. And then you look at Dallas colleges and what they're doing in their regional ecosystem. You look at what's happening with Ivy Tech. You look at what's happening with UMGC. They're all doing different things, but we're all trying to reach in some ways the same kinds of students who just probably aren't going to be well served by traditional education pathways. Those traditional education pathways, God bless them. I mean, when my daughter graduated high school, she wanted to go on a traditional pathway. That's fantastic. She went to UT Austin, got her undergrad degree from the College of Education there, one of the top colleges of education in the country. She loved every bit of it. But when she wanted to get her master's, guess where she went? She went to WGU because it fit where she wanted to live and the how she was wanting to live when she was going to the next phase. Those options are the kinds of things we want for our striving students.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're turning the last corner here in this interview. I'm going to get to the lightning round questions now. Okay, so we're going to hit 10 of them quickly, and we'll motor through this so everybody can get some good insight onto how you think, Mark.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Our first question: what's the most important habit that learners should develop?
Well, I think the biggest thing is falling in love with learning. I think the idea is so many people think learning is about achieving grades. It's not. It's about falling in love with learning. You want to actually understand and fall in love with the process of learning in a big way. Taught my kids that of their entire educational careers, right?
Right. Okay. Number 2, if you weren't limited by resources, what education passion project would you pursue?
No, I think eventually we're going to get to a time where distance learning no longer happens on a computer or happens on a screen. I think we're going to be in a place where we actually have combinations of live and holographic folks in the same room, basically having what used to be roundtable discussions, and it's going to feel like we're all kind of there at the same time. And I've already seen elements of this being produced by people in different places. I was at the Google campus a few months ago, and they were showing me their presence technologies in terms of how they're doing this. I would love to be a part of helping that become more and more likely, mainly because I would love the idea of being able to make sure anybody everywhere, whether it's rural Appalachia or inner cities, could be a part of the vibrant learning environments, and place would no longer be a barrier.
Yeah, I can't imagine we're too far away from that. Yeah. The technology is just moving so rapidly. Okay, number 3, what profession other than your current profession would you like to attempt?
Oh, that's a great question. I am such a eclectic person. Like one minute I would answer that question as a musician, the next minute it would be as an athlete, the next minute it'd be as a physicist. Like I love I'm so curious about different things. I don't have an easy answer to that question. I'm far too I guess scattered. I used to call myself a systematic eclecticist because I like to learn about so many different things.
Okay, we'll give you a pass on not picking one, but that gave us a lot of options.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Number 4, what active president of another university do you admire and why?
That's a hard question because there's probably 100 that are out there. I think, I'm going to give you 2 because I think they're from different sectors, right? So one would be Ellen Newfield here from Cal State San Marcos. Why I love the voice that she's bringing to her community is she is so tuned into her community and so connected to the needs of her folks and willing to partner with anybody and everybody to help students learn at a higher level. She exudes the passion of education. She is totally focused on the kind of support of her students and just, the presence around the importance of education and the support for it is seen every single day. Love every bit of that, kind of larger work. So that would be one. Then I would probably turn to, you're saying active though, right? You're not saying
active president.
Okay, active president. I'm going to go with Russell Lowry Hart. So Russell Lowry Hart's the incoming president at Austin Community College, longstanding president before that at Amarillo College. He took a college that was probably had a 10% completion rate, turned into a place that had almost a 50% completion rate.
Wow.
And one of the things he did was by deeply studying poverty dynamics and training his entire college in poverty trauma. So they understood how you respond to poverty. And it was a conversation people didn't really want to have. They were kind of avoiding. And he said, let's think about who our students actually are and the experiences they're having and figure out how we can get the right kind of supports around it. And I bring him up because the courage it took to have those conversations, look at the data, say we're not good right now, we can absolutely get better. And so they got to a place where by the time he left, they were at 50% completion, another 30, 40% were transferring on before they left. So unbelievable success rates. But what I love about it was he'll absolutely talk about the fact that we have to love our students. And part of loving our students means it's not a throwaway line. Like that means you're going to wrap all kinds of care and support around them. And no matter what kind of a desperate background they come from, you're thinking about the support services they need. And he'd always say, he's like, you don't have to be a social worker, but we better know a social worker. Right. So we can get the right resources for our students.
Well, it sounds like somebody that I should be having a conversation with sometime soon about joining the President's Forum.
He's good.
All right. What's number 5? What's the best book you've read in the last year?
God, we actually do reading lists constantly. I'll tell you the one that's been the most useful for our college has been the book Range. And the book Range is really gets you thinking about the importance of learning broadly from lots of different contexts and being able to use that to kind of redesign your own experiences in your own institution, for example. It's not a book about education. It's actually a book that completely blows up the idea of the Tiger Mom about hyper specialization. He basically proves the point that the best of the best in different fields learn broadly before they specialize. So the idea that it's really important to have your kids play lots of sports before they go deep in area, play lots of instruments before they go deep, learn from lots of different sectors before they pick a profession or discipline. But one of my favorite things he talks about in that book is the challenge of what he calls wicked domains. And he considers education and healthcare wicked domains because they're not repeatable. They're often brutally kind of interaction effects between people and technology and all kinds of other things. He says you absolutely need to bring together combinations of data science, domain expertise, and design thinking. When you bring those things together, you can really make a difference. It's almost like AI and HI, human intelligence. You bring AI and HI together, you can actually make a difference in those sectors. But it does take a valuing of all three of those things to be able to make a difference. Really neat book. And he's a great writer, so he brings it to life in a really kind of cool way.
I love that he tees up education and healthcare with the word wicked.
I love it. The other one, by the way, the other book that our entire team loved was Poetry Unbound. And Poetry Unbound is a collection of modern poetry, and there are wonderful like podcasts where the actual authors are reading it, and it's unbelievable. And it really takes you on a journey about lots of different lived experiences, and it makes you think about your role as an educator and helping kind of serve diverse folks that way.
Yeah, right. That sounds good. Number 6, outside your work, how do you spend your free time?
I play a lot of sports, do a lot of athletics, and more importantly, I spend a ton of time with my family whenever I possibly can. I've got a big rowdy family of 4 kids, and whenever I have a chance to play basketball with the boys or do game nights with the kids, like I'm there.
Yeah. Those two things of sports and family mix pretty consistently in your household, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 7. What piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Just be willing to kind of take your failures and learn from them as much as you get thrilled about your successes. I think the bottom line is it's going to go up and down, and you have to just be okay with both. Right? It's the chop wood, carry water in the hard times, and learn to appreciate all the folks who contribute to the times when things work. Right. And I think, that has been a lesson I've just learned along the way, which is like, victory has so many people who have helped make that happen. You have to step back and appreciate all the fact that comes together, but also realize that what people call failures are these amazing learning events where you can take a deep breath and figure out why didn't that work, and be willing to just dive deep into that and be honest. Right, around what worked and what didn't work and why it didn't work, and take all kinds of personal responsibility for it. And by the way, you're going to be doing that your entire life. Just be ready for it.
That's tough to master, but yeah, that's something we have to do. Okay, so number 8, what's thinking of your time at work? What's your best day at work?
Oh, without a doubt, commencement. I'm a junkie for commencement. I literally like pomp and circumstance is on my playlist, baby. I love, and part of it's because it's so symbolic of all this time and energy. And in a place like National, what's amazing is when you go to our commencements, like there are as many people, normal traditional commencements, it's the parents cheering for their kid. At national, it is the kids cheering for mom. It is the kids cheering for grandmom. Like, all ages and stages, all different kinds of backgrounds, and the sheer joy and the pride of accomplishment and the family connection around it. There's nothing more symbolic. And Wes, I think we've talked about this before at some point. Like, one of my favorite things to do is to watch the shoes. Because the shoes tell a story, because you've got new shoes and old shoes and work shoes and like all different kinds of, and they just like, you just get the diversity of the kinds of people we're trying to serve. It is like, I'm a junkie for commencement. I know some people get burned out on it. I've yet to get burned out on commencement.
I'm a big fan of the shoes and the caps, the messages on graduation caps.
Yeah, exactly. All about it.
Yeah. Okay. Number 9, what's one innovation outside of education that has most improved your life?
Oh, there's no doubt. It's been the mapping of the human genome. With that, because truthfully, it's a long story, but about 5 years ago, we found out that I had hemochromatosis, and we wouldn't have found out I had hemochromatosis, which is an overproduction of iron in your blood, if my older brother hadn't. My older brother was almost dying, all kinds of challenges. They didn't know what was going on. And finally, a holistic medicine, integrated medicine doctor pushed him to get a genetic test and do his full genetic mapping. And in there, they found out he had hemochromatosis genes, and he got tested for it. And sure enough, he was way over the iron production. And basically, the iron was eating his organs from the inside out. He got the fix, which is basically you give blood, like it's a really just massive phlebotomies, and it flushes that out. And he's right as rain, healed him completely. But the doctor said immediately, okay, this usually hits in your 50s and 60s, and it kills people because doctors don't know why, because it eats your organs out. He goes, you got to tell anybody else in your family, and especially any males. And he told me to go get it checked out. I wouldn't get checked out, and I'm sure my ferritin levels were 4 times the level they were supposed to be. Wow. So I was on the way to the exact same thing, and so I was able to get on the plan, which basically means I give blood once a quarter, which is something I should do anyway, and it solves the entire problem. I'm positive, Wes, that's what killed my dad. Like, my dad was healthy as a horse until he was in his late 50s, early 60s, and suddenly he just fell apart. And we never kind of knew why, but it's something genetic that's in Celtic backgrounds that is carried on. And I go back to the idea that if that human genome hadn't been mapped, like, that probably wouldn't have been found, right, as a thing. And so we're always thinking about these kinds of technologies that can improve your life, but some of them actually save your life.
I think you're going to be the winner on that question throughout those interviews. That's a great answer. All right, the last question for you. If you could take a class from any expert, living or dead, what's the class and who's the instructor?
Ooh, boy, that's a great question. Wow, it's a hard question for an educator, because we love it. I would take a class, if you're going to let me do this, I'm going to say this, jointly taught by Maya Angelou and Martin Luther King Jr., and it would be a class on the use of language to inspire change. Both of them were just amazing craftspeople with the use of language in both writing and speech that could just capture people and to actually kind of drive change. And it would just be amazing to sit and learn and kind of like figure out. I love kind of learning about how those just changes in phrases, the kind of like just how you use everything from spaces between words to the punch of a certain sentence. I would just love to kind of learn more from masters at that.
We'd probably have to have that class be taught with technology, so there's no cap on enrollment, right?
Oh yeah, be amazing.
I think there'll be a lot of people that would love to sit in that one. Okay, well, Mark, thanks for joining us today. We'll wrap with that, and we'll be looking forward to more interaction with you at the President's Forum and beyond.
Hey, thanks, Wes. And hey, I just want to say thank you for the work the President's Forum does. We need partners in common cause to be able to do this work well. And now is more important time than ever before to make sure our voices are being heard at the State House and at the federal level. So thank you so much.
You bet. I don't have anything else to add to that. Thanks, Mark. Many thanks to President Mark Milliron for joining us today. For a full video version of this podcast, you can subscribe on YouTube. And for the audio version, just subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join us in our next episode as we discuss innovation that's measured by student success. After all, the only thing that truly matters is the success of our students.